I would like to, first of all, thank the amazing panelists that have joined us today. Mrs. Khaloud Alnuwais was supposed to be with us. She had a very urgent last-minute cancellation, but we'll be touching on NAMA because NAMA is a very, very important stakeholder when it comes to waste diversion. I have a set of slides I would like to present first to set the stage for this conversation. And then very shortly after, we'll get into a very interesting conversation with the panelists that each one of them presents a different point of view. So if you can please go to the slides. So if we look at food waste is a very, very important topic. And as you have been seeing for the past 2 years in the United Arab Emirates, this topic has been emphasized a lot. Globally, we have 1.8 billion tons of food waste that is being produced. We have $1 trillion of food losses. Can you imagine this number? It's a very, very high number that is being wasted every year. And then the contribution of food waste is about 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, which is a very important topic that globally we're trying to tackle. This is something that we can reduce, and we can reduce that significantly using the inverted pyramid hierarchy. And this one is not a generic one. This is one was done on food waste, particularly in Abu Dhabi. So what you can do first is prevent and optimize and redistribute the waste. So instead of making the waste, you can prevent by thinking how you want to import or produce the waste, make sure there's precision in that, but as well optimize it and be able to redistribute it whenever you are not able to sell it. Then you go to reusing that waste into higher value repurposing, like, for example, making freeze-dried snacks from berries that before they perish, we actually capture them and we upcycle them. But as well, we're able to make them as compost. We can recover the energy out of them. And then the very final thing we want to do is disposing them. So if you can see, there are numerous things we can do for food waste before we actually throw it in the garbage. And today, unfortunately, most of the food that is being discarded is going to the garbage directly. We can see some leading examples, whether in Sweden, we have in Germany, in the US, in Korea, many examples of how they were able to reduce waste, to be able to engage the community differently, to optimize the food pathways and logistics, and be able to make things more efficient. And this is done by changing 4 things. There are many things that have to be changed. But if we want to focus on what are the most important elements when it comes to food waste, it's about having the regulation to make people accountable and apply the pay as you throw. If people are wasting, they need to pay. If people are saving waste, then they are able to benefit and reduce their cost. By changing the culture, it's a big cultural change. You can see a lot of us, we go to a different country, we behave differently because the regulations there create a different culture. So we have to change the culture, and that's a very important topic not to be taken lightly. Number 3 is creating a collaborative ecosystem. This is not one entity doing all the work. It's not ADAFSA issuing a regulation tomorrow and that's going to fix all the issues. What will fix this is having the ability to have ADAFSA, private sector, entrepreneurs like we have here, big producers, all collaborating together, working together to find solutions one by one to the food waste generation that we are exerting. And finally, it's about public-private partnerships. This is not something that can be done by the public alone. It's not something that can be done by the private alone. It needs to have that partnerships. And we see, and unfortunately Mrs. Khaloud is not with us, but we can see that NAMA is today taking a lot of steps in collaboration with ADAFSA, with the Environmental Agency of Abu Dhabi, in addressing this very important topic, very much empowered to achieve targets in reducing the problem by half. So we want to have our food waste in Abu Dhabi between now and 2030, which is coming in a few years. Let's take a few examples of technologies where countries like the Netherlands or Sweden were able to reduce waste, either by using AI to monitor the waste that is being there, or by applying a marketplace for selling and buying surplus waste. And you can see in the bottom, not very much visible, but we have had some pilots of that happening in Abu Dhabi and successful pilots as well. We can see as well in Poland and in Denmark having the black soldier fly transforming food waste significantly in the country. and being able to have an anaerobic digestion as well, converting waste into fuel. Circa Biotech is with us today. Dr. Haytham is going to talk about black soldier fly pilots and implementation activities, but it's not enough. We need to do more of that in Abu Dhabi. And as well, we need to tackle processing the waste through the biogas fuel project. Today, we're very happy to have an esteemed set of panelists that are joining us. We have Dr. Afkar Qasem from ADAFSA. She's driving food waste diversion efforts in Abu Dhabi from a policy perspective. We have Alivezous Theo, who's with the Agritech group. He is Senior Director of Sustainability and HSE. And we have Dr. Haytham with Circa Biotech. It's a startup. And as you can see, all the players, they complement each other. So very much looking forward to the very exciting conversation. So if we start with Dr. Afkar. Dr. Afkar, thanks a lot for joining us and everybody else today. We would love to hear from you what ADAFSA, and that question is going to go to every team member, what your organization, in this case ADAFSA, is doing to tackle food waste, and what role you play to tackle food waste.
Thank you, Rabih, and a very good morning to everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, especially in the Global Food Week. As we see a lot of food around us, I think we're always reminded of the importance of saving the blessing. Just a quick introduction about ADAFSA for maybe some people are not, they don't know the full mandate. The Abu Dhabi Food and Agriculture Safety Authority, it covers a mandate of the primary agriculture production. We have inspection on the whole supply chain to ensure food safety. The hotels and the restaurants that you go to, ADAFSA is there making sure that the food is safe for consumption. The overall, an important mandate for us is a food security mandate. And under that, you're talking about primary production and increasing the efficiency of that production and reducing any waste that happens from the agriculture sector. This is the first step and the first point of supply to the market. And of course, there is a strong relation between food safety and loss, because a big portion of the losses in the food happens due to contamination or due to spoilage because of poor storage conditions. So that's an important part of what ADAFSA does as well.
Amazing, and thanks a lot for defining the role.
Policy, maybe. I have not mentioned the policies, which I think is the archetype of the work that we do. But we set the policy for the sector. And I think we'll talk about that in detail.
If you allow me just to ask a follow-on question on the policy. So where the role of ADAFSA comes in and the role of the Environmental Agency of Abu Dhabi, which has as well a role when it comes to waste and particularly food waste here. How do you delineate these responsibilities?
I think we complement each other. I'd like to think that in ADAFSA we focus initially on preventing waste. So anything that would reduce the quantity of food that end up going to the landfill. The Environment Agency looks at waste management. And this is very important to distinguish. As we were looking at the pyramid, there is a difference between prevention and reduction of waste, and then there is waste management. So typically when we send food for energy production, this is not technically a reduction in waste. This is a good way that we've managed the waste in an environmental and better and sustainable way. But the waste has happened, and we did not divert it to a human use. So it has to be used for animal or for human consumption. And sometimes if it's used for other value-added material production, it could... so yes, again, we do a lot of training on the farmers, for example, on the best practices on the farm to reduce losses at the farm, post-harvest practices, best cooling technologies. And we've talked about technology just in your presentation and how important it is. And sometimes it can. So a typical tomato, for example, if it goes through the proper pre-cooling and storage, you can extend its life shelf by a week to 2 weeks. And that's a big gain, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, great. And I think if we can draw a line here and say where ADAFSA plays, I think it's everything before disposal. So you have a role to play across prevention, redistribution, even sometimes composting, and then before it becomes waste, actually, this is where it switches to
This is
EA.
where we're focusing a lot of our efforts. However, we understand that for the purpose of sustainability, and a lot of waste happens, and you cannot avoid it, it's good to also encourage composting, encourage energy recovery. And there are other departments as well, like the energy department has its own plans for that, EAD has its own plans.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a very good point as well. That's where there's an angle for the Department of Energy to step in. So moving on to Theo, and it's the same question. I'll come back to you, Dr. Afkar, on initiatives that ADAFSA is taking on tackling food waste. But talking to Theo about Agdia, and today, what role do you play to be able to reduce your food waste across your manufacturing and processing facilities?
Hi everyone, thanks Rabia for the invitation. I'm very glad being here with you and being able to showcase some of our good practices that we follow in this super important topic. Just a short introduction about Agdia. Agdia is a food manufacturing company, so we are not doing any work in the agricultural sector like cultivating crops. So we are a food manufacturing company. We have a presence in 7 countries in the Gulf, more than 25 manufacturing sites, different categories, and this is important to have in our mind. So we have, for example, different categories from water, from flour, from animal feed. We have confectionery, we have dates business. We have also protein and chicken, so and also tomato paste. So it's a very diverse portfolio that we have, and for us, we built our strategy a few years ago, and food waste was from that time and still a very, very important topic. It's one of the pillars actually in our strategy. Now, for us, it's quite challenging, the food waste, because as I explained for you, we have all these different manufacturing sites, and you can imagine the different manufacturing operational procedures. So we work a lot on the optimization of the production, so this is really critical for us to avoid the waste. And also we are working a lot with local partners like NIMA. We have partnered with them in the last 2 months to really work with them on supplying them with data, because as you know, we are creating now the baseline for the UAE in the food waste, and we can significantly contribute. But for us as Agdia, we are also working a lot with universities. So we have already established 2 projects with universities to work on how we can upcycle our waste. So our concern is that we have waste, and for us as a strategy, the waste is always seen as an opportunity. So it's always seen as how we can use the waste to promote the circularity in our organization. And you will be astonished by the really impressive solutions that we can find by ways that we can, instead of disposing to the landfill, we can reuse. We can use it as raw material in one of other. For example, one of our waste in one of our business categories can be a raw material in another, like dates fiber, for example, date seeds, which is very nutritious. And this is how we work. So we have also a CVC, this is also important, a significant fund that we work with startups. So we identify startups that can really help us, innovative startups that can really help us in solutions that can really benefit the market and, of course, our organization. We invest in them, and we try really to introduce innovative solutions across. Just one of them that we recently worked, it was how we can really reduce the food waste in dates. In dates, we work with 24,000 date farmers, and we did some pilots to really understand how we can double the yield with a specific sensor and specific solution that we introduce in the soil. in the soil to really help the farmers. So there are a lot of solutions that we are working, but for us, and we work very closely also with Adafska when it goes to the dates area, and this is an important topic that we can either discuss later. Yeah. Collaboration is very important with different partners, private, public, and authorities.
Absolutely, 100%. And I'll come back to you, Theo, in a bit to talk about one of the examples and dig deep into that on how you utilize technology to be able to reduce food waste and do it in an economically positive way so you're able to actually make money as well, so it doesn't become a tax. Moving to a champion of waste diversion in Abu Dhabi, Dr. Haytham, you've been working on this topic for a very long time, and by deploying particularly the black soldier fly technology. So we'll talk in a bit about some of the pilots you've done and results, but before, if you can introduce your startup and the technology itself, because sometimes it's mystical and people don't know exactly what it does. So if you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to explain what we are doing at Circa Biotech. So Circa Biotech started as a startup here in Abu Dhabi 5 years ago. So it's been 5 years that we are operating. Now we are able to process 6,000 tons a year. So if I see the compare it to the world where we are, it's like something that is scalable. And our plans for the coming 5 years that we are raising funds for now is to move to 168,000 tons a year. So the first aspect that we should address is the scalability of the technology. So how we do that? We do that using beneficial insects. It's an insect called the black soldier fly. So we receive 6,000 tons of food waste. The larva eats it in 10 days, all of it with no emissions. And then we recover protein that we make animal feed out of it. And a fertilizer that is the manure of those insects. And recently we are working with ADNOC, sorry, it's our first customer for that. We turned into sustainable aviation fuel. So we turn food waste into sustainable aviation fuel using beneficial insects together with protein and fertilizer. So it's a real illustration of what we call circular economy. So if you are working with Arvia, for example, with their procurement department, we get their food waste from food processing. We give it to our insect, and we turn it into protein for their chicken feed. So it's full circular. Second, which is more important, of course, it's important to have the scalability, but it's more important also to have a profitable business. So as you said, it's over $1 trillion globally, the cost of waste. So what we are doing is we are transforming this cost into profit. So we are able to run a profitable business that is turning food waste into protein, so alternative protein for animal feed, fertilizer for regenerative agriculture, and sustainable aviation fuel. So technologically, it's possible to do. And your question is very pertinent about how we do it, how people think about using beneficial insect. Actually, we are simply mimicking the nature. If you go to a forest not touched by man, you will see that in this forest, there is no smell. There is no waste. How the forest do that? How the nature do that? If a rat dies in the forest, it will be eaten first by insect. And those insects will be a food to other insects, so it will be eaten by birds, reptile, or even fish. And this is how nature does the things. It's cyclic. So we harness the power of nature with beneficial insects, like others do with bees or with silkworms. So it's a beneficial insect. It's not a vector to any disease. It's not a pest. And we engineered an environment that allows this organism to grow and reproduce at an industrial scale. And this is what we are doing. By the way, if you go to the pyramid, I don't want to talk only about our company. We are an ecosystem of companies, startups, SMEs in the UAE that we are addressing the different levels of that inverted pyramid before diverting to landfill. So we are working with Nama on the baseline and the process on once we divert from landfill, what we will be doing with all those waste. So we are working also with the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment for new regulation, including the extended producer responsibility project. But also we are working with the Ministry of Economy on building an infrastructure that will support this change that is definitely coming here in the UAE. And that's why we are talking about the 168,000 tons a year processing capacity. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll come back to you, Dr. Haytham, about taking a case study on the economics of the projects. So you mentioned the project, you were very thorough in explaining it, but how it makes money. I'll come back to you to that in a few minutes. But going back to Dr. Afkar, now let's dig deeper. Okay, we understand what each entity does and the role that they play, but what are the specific initiatives that ADAFSA is doing today to be able to address the food loss and waste in the Emirate?
Great. So like I said, DAFSA covers a big mandate. Let me focus on what we have launched recently for the restaurants. And I think this is a very exciting project because it matches advancement in technology and AI, and everybody likes to talk about AI now. What we've done is we've installed, and this is a voluntarily basis now, we've installed monitoring systems in a number of restaurants. I think there are 23 participating restaurants where the system monitors the staff when they're working, how are they dressed in the proper way, covering their hair, wearing gloves, are they washing their hands properly? When food comes into the kitchens, is it stored properly immediately in the fridge, or is it left on the counter? And using AI and learning through the machine learning, alerts are sent to ADAFSA and to the restaurant that a certain behavior or a practice is not according to the standards. And again, that goes to the point where we're linking waste or losses that happen while the industry is preparing the service to a final quantity of food loss because there is spoilage, for example. The other initiative also, we are tracking a number of vehicles while they're transporting the food. And again, because we are a very hot country, an hour of a reduction in temperature could hugely impact the shelf life of a product. And we're using this information to feed back into these participating institutes about the current practices of their employees, how they can improve. So we are instilling a different working atmosphere within these organizations. And hopefully, if this expands to the full players in the sector, I think then we'll have a very good way to monitor and change immediately the behavior on the spot when the driver of the truck makes a delivery and keeps the door open and the temperature drops, leading to spoilage in the items or shortening the shelf life. So this is one of the things for the supply chain and for the restaurants. Another project we are doing on the agriculture sector, we've partnered with Wageningen, the Dutch university, to look at different technologies that can be applied on the farm level, especially for handling the products, pre-cooling and cold storage. And the idea is to also test technologies that are feasible. We like to talk about technology a lot, but the key is it feasible for the farmer? Is it feasible for the businesses to apply said technology so we can see the positive results of it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think as well there's another initiative that Dr. Samer will be announcing soon that is an exciting initiative in the next session. Theo, I got the signal that we're running a bit out of time. So in less than 1 minute, can you just tell me about some examples of technology that you're deploying right now at Agria that is making the change?
Yes, I will try in 1 minute. It's so we need to know that, as I explained you, 25 sites, 4 different business units, completely different environment, different maturity, a different level of operation efficiencies across all these countries, across all these sites. What we did is that we said that, okay, we need to get an understanding what is our food waste. What is our food waste in terms of tonnage, in terms of material, in terms of cost? So we implemented the platform now. Of course, this platform captures all our ESG data, but one specific part relates to food waste. So now we have a mapping that goes very detailed, and we have at the group level our waste in this area. So for us, it helps us to understand why, for example, we have from a specific, of course, this attracts also the management attention, because when we're discussing about impacting the P&L, they can understand that they need to act immediately. So we have actions now in the site that we didn't have before, because we didn't have this visibility at the group level to understand where our food goes. And of course, this different understanding and picture of screenshot of all our different ways, we can start understanding what are the synergies that we can have internally, what are the synergies or the work that we can do with startups to understand and to say, okay, these startups can work with tomato peel, for example, because we are working with on that area as well, and they can help us on that. Okay, let's work on that because this is a significant tonnage waste, different things for dates again. So for us, this is something that opened our eyes. It helped us a lot to understand where it is, and definitely it will help us forward expediting our agenda. The last part for this specific tool is that we will again introduce the AI that will give us in a while real-time data, so we will be proactive and on time acting fast.
That's super important because you cannot manage what you don't measure, and having that platform is very important to start. Dr. Haytham, very quickly, some numbers around how are you making money out of these projects, if any, and if not, where the gaps are?
Yeah, we are making money. So just to let you know, from 1 ton of food waste that we are recovering, after processing and selling the product, it makes us over $600 of revenue. So, and we can go more than that because it's a quantity of scale, so economy of scale. The gap is scaling, financing the scale-up. So this is because if we finance it with our own revenue, it will be very slow and we need to go fast. So, and then after investing in CapEx, it's a little bit different.
So $600 is coming per ton. That's the revenue. What is the operating cost and what's the levelized cost of the CapEx for that same ton? Just to give the audience a quick idea.
So on that, we are dealing with 35% of gross margin, and the advantage is we are not paying for the source, for the feedstock. Our products also are very highly priced.
Yes.
So we are dealing with now aviation fuel, which allow us to have even better margin if we can do when we will be doing the scale up. The last thing that I wanted to tell you is about the real impact. So we are dealing only with pre-consumer food waste. So we work with businesses. We work with Spinneys, for example, Carrefour, Waitrose. Spinneys, we diverted over 65% of their food waste from the landfill in 6 months. So it's not only it's a profitable business, but also it's an impactful business.
Amazing. That's super cool, and it's scalable and it's profitable. In less than 30 seconds, we're going to combine the last 2 questions in a very, very quick feedback. What are the challenges that you see, or the one challenge that you see is the biggest challenge, and what would be your recommendation after this panel going forward, starting with Dr. Afkar?
I think we need to have the whole infrastructure supportive system that enables businesses, startups, large players, private sector to really complement each other. And of course, there is a role for the government there, building the infrastructure for segregation, for example. It's one thing that always comes across whenever we are discussing the issue. And even the businesses have a hard time valorizing the waste if it doesn't come segregated. And Dr. Haytham can attest to that. So this is a very, very important point. And I think the other one I would add is the data has to be measured and reported. It has to be so we understand the size of the opportunity and we know where the waste is generated, and this will help us set better plans for what can be done, depending on what's the type that is generated, what can be done with it to generate more value.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Theo, you mentioned before collaboration, but what else?
Apart from collaboration, of course, infrastructure. So we have, for example, organic waste currently, and we cannot composting because there is no proper composting plant. So infrastructure is very important to make it, and also the data.
Yeah.
So companies should be engaged in data reporting.
Of course.
There should be a clear database. So if we have, and this is what NIMA is working, and it's an amazing initiative, when they will have the whole picture of all the food waste, they will definitely leverage this to introduce the solutions in place, of course following with the policies which is still in development phase.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Haytham?
Yeah, one thing that should be for us very important, in addition to the infrastructure, is the harmonization of the regulation throughout the Emirates. So we are an Abu Dhabi-based company and business. When we move to Dubai or Sharjah, it's like we move to another country. Because it's even other entities, government bodies that we have to interact with. So our suggestion was for the ministry and the big project is to have one شباك موحد, we say it, I don't know the...
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop that will harmonize all the regulation and the licenses that are required for this kind of activities. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So we heard infrastructure, we heard collaboration, we heard financing, we heard policy making. So all of these are very important for us to take this topic forward. Very important, if you have any ideas to bring it to the panelists, please stop by and speak to them right after this. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.